And to kick us off today is somebody that's worked in the industry for a really long time, who's, I hope, going to give some amazing insight into how things have changed and perhaps, again, what's been learned at Bristol Zoo and then what the future might look like for those guys. And also, it's going to be interactive, which is amazing on Zoom. Good grief, we're not just going to be sitting there and staring at the screen. So the person that I'm talking about is Simon Garrett. I can see that he's off mute, which means he must be ready to talk to us. I've gone over loads as usual. I'm really sorry, Simon. So you stick to the time that you have, and then we'll just add a bit of time on for a coffee afterwards at the end. So it gives me great pleasure to mute myself at last. Hooray! And let Simon take over. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you very much. I've just started my stopwatch, so I'm going to stick to my 20 minutes, which for those who know me is going to be a struggle. I have been known to try and do a 15-minute talk with 65 PowerPoint slides. I'm not going to do that today. So what I've done is basically brain dumped onto a piece of paper and sent it to you. So welcome to the inside of my head. I'm sorry it's so messy, but that's what it's like inside my head. It's also like that in my office, as those who know my office well. One of the reasons I wanted to do it this way is because a lot of what I do and what I think about and what I've learned over the years is about connections. And so if you've got a piece of paper there, and I've got it in front of me as well, and I've been scribbling on it already this morning, you can scribble on it, you can draw connections between the two. There may be some things on here which I don't cover because I'm going to stick to my 20 minutes. So it also means that in the future, you can either come back to me or on a coffee break or something and go, you missed that bit out. What was that bit on the bit of paper? Now, there may be some intriguing things on here already, so let me start and explain and we'll see where we go. To be honest, I have no idea what route we're going to take through this piece of paper, so let's see. Oh, the other thing that I was going to say is it'd be great if you could have your cameras on. I'm working on two screens here and I've got all of you in front of me. And if you've got your cameras on, it's just I can look at you and talk to people, which is really nice as well, rather than a horrible black screen. It also means that it will avoid you doing what I do in Zoom meetings and really trying to pay attention, but actually being distracted by my phone or what's out the window, or actually doing a quick email and then forgetting that I've lost my place and stuff like that. Anyway, let me get going. Top left on that bit of paper is a timeline from the origin of the universe. Okay, I've taken a step back here and basically said, do you know what? In the big scheme of things, actually none of this matters. We tend to focus very much on our day-to-day operation and how important things are. If you take a very, very big step back and go, you know what, at some point the sun is going to expand, it's going to toast the earth, so whatever we do is kind of pointless in the long term anyway. I once did an entire talk on conservation and started off like that and went, actually it's a lot about focus sometimes. Now, I'm not suggesting that we just give up now because that timescale is a bit ridiculous, but sometimes it is worth just taking a step back and looking at things in context. Which is why I'm going to cross that one off because I talked about that. I'm going to come down to the stick insects and violin. And I'm just going to ask a question because I like doing interactive presentations. Why have I put stick insects and a violin on here? Any ideas? You can either unmute or stick something in the chat. First of all, do you know which kind of stick insects they are?
Are we playing a tiny violin for the Lord Howe?
Yeah, it's Lord Howe Island stick insects. This for me is just a little brain thing of going, okay, we get very excited in zoos and we talk about breeding things like Lord Howe Island stick insects, and our PR is talking all about how brilliant we've done with our Lord Howe Island stick insects. And then for me, you take one step back, two steps back, three steps back and go, do you know what? If we save Lord Howe Island stick insects, so what? Really, it doesn't matter in the big scheme of things. If we do that, we're fiddling while Rome burns. Do you see what I did there? This is basically focusing on some tiny thing which we get very excited about, but you've got to take a step back and go, is that really what we're on about here? So I'm going to tick off that one, so I've talked about them. So top left, you've got some documents, little thumbnails of documents. So I have been at the zoo a long time. I started here in 1989. I just this morning dug out this. This is nearly my first BIAZA educators meeting I went to. It was Edinburgh Zoo in 1993. And the things that were talked about was interpretive planning, zoo education, where are we going, earth education, why do teachers bring their pupils to the zoo, stuff like that. So a lot of it isn't new. And after a while, I stopped going to zoo education conferences because I was just hearing the same thing going on round and round, and branched out. But anyway, I'll come to that. So basically, I predate the first document, which was zoos basically looking at what their role in conservation was. And that was the 1993 World Zoo Conservation Strategy. That was basically all about conservation breeding, which is going back to my point about Lord Howe and the sticking sticks. It's lovely, it's important, there are things that need captive breeding, but that ain't the answer. So of course, 2005, we got the next version of it, which is talking a lot about conservation ex situ, but also about field conservation work as well. That was lovely. But it took us until 2015 to get a document which was talking about not only conservation breeding, not only sorting out things out in the wild and doing field projects, but also something about our visitors. And of course, you guys, us, we're actually about people, we're about visitors. And this also, I'm ticking things off as I go to remind myself, and I'm going to draw connections as well. So you can tick, this is like bingo. Tick things off when I've talked about them. So I'm going to segue over to zoos are not about animals. This was a talk I did at a BIAZA education conference in South Wales in 2008, I think it was, because I was getting frustrated that everything was focusing on the animals and understanding animals and telling people about animals. And you go, actually, the big issues here are about people. We've got to understand people better. It's all about people. So crossing that one off and going up, there's a thing above that. There was a Radio 4 program. There was actually a whole swathe of radio programs a few years ago. This one was, I've put the thumbnail of there. What's the Point of Zoos by Quentin Letts. He did a whole series, which, you know, what's the point of this? What's the point of that? What's the point of Parliament? What's the point of democracy? But he did what's the point of zoos? And it made me really, really cross. And I'll tell you why it made me cross. I've heard so many zoo directors interviewed about what's the point of zoos and what we're doing, and they constantly talk about particular tree snails and Przewalski's horses and just a handful of things. And also they say something which I think is ridiculous, which is, and of course when people come into the zoo and we give them a great experience and they get connected, they have a lovely time, and then they often use that word hope. We hope they go away and think about their lives and do things differently. And it makes me really cross every time I hear that, because it's bollocks, basically. I've heard, and I won't mention his name, but a particular zoo director who said people come in and they see the pandas and they go, oh, that's amazing, I'm going to go and do things that help pandas. And they don't. People standing there in front of the pandas are worried about where they're going to get their next ice cream, or the fact that the kids just dropped something or whatever. Let's take a step back and be real here. Taking me further to the right then, so I've got a picture of an upside down person there with written underneath it, and this makes me cross as well. Okay, this is cathartic for me, this keynote, because I can just get off my chest all these things that make me cross. So Andy, when you phoned me up and said, can you do a keynote on all the things you've learned, this is actually my opportunity to go, these are things I've learned to avoid. When I started as a zoo educator back in 1989, I did my summer job. This guy and his quote was all over mugs and t-shirts and posters and everything. Now, anyone who's old enough to know who this is, again, in the chat or unmute yourselves, who is this upside down bloke?
Is it Baba Duem?
It's Baba Duem. And anyone, okay, no, I have to be really careful with this, because people like to, okay, confirmation bias. People like to pay attention to things that they agree with. I did a talk about this, what I'm just going to tell you, at the IZD meeting in the Middle East a couple of years ago. And I used his quote, I had it up on the screen. And my next bit was going to be, and this is all wrong, which is why I've put him upside down. But the zoo organisers, the conference organisers, had already, by the time I'd got to my next slide, they'd already tweeted, this is what, you know, this is the way forward. This is all about how we engage people with wildlife. And I went, no, it's not. I was trying to tell people that it's not what to do. Anyone who doesn't know the quote, so, okay, I'm going to tell you the quote, but then you have to, I'm really, really begging you to understand that this is not the way forward. But when I started, okay, Baba Duem, I imagined he was some important seer who's sitting in a cave thinking deep thoughts. You know, he was talking about this Senegalese conservationist. He was Minister for the Environment in Senegal, and what he said was, people will love what they understand, and they will conserve what they love. They will love what they understand, and they'll understand what they're taught. And that's just so brilliant, because for me as an education officer, a new education officer, it's brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to teach people things, then they'll understand them, then they'll love them, then they'll conserve them. Job done. And it feels so intuitive and it feels just right, and it is utterly wrong. It is really wrong. So please cross them out, okay? Get a big red pen and cross out upside down Babadium. Because if we base our conservation education on hoping that we tell people stuff and they go and do things differently, it's wrong, okay? People do what they do and then they post justify it, okay? Not the other way around. So I'll give you another thing. I used to hear people when I first started doing zoo education saying, I do all this stuff and it's great and I want to share my love of nature with people, and if only they all loved nature as much as I do. So this is kind of thing, okay, so you want to turn people into everyone like you. Actually, a lot of people, I'm going to swing down bottom left there, are more interested in motor racing, okay, or fine wines or history, okay. That's what I've got down bottom left. So there's Henry VIII there. Everyone thinks of Henry VIII when he was old and fat. Actually, he was a bit of a dude apparently when he was younger and a great horseman. So I've put a younger picture of him in there. So if you're a historian, actually, that's your interest, not nature. You don't want to get out in nature because it's messy and it's horrible. My first expedition was in the forests of South America in Venezuela. Only by going there did I understand how people wanted to cut it down, because it's hot, it's sweaty, everything I had went moldy, my hair went moldy. I'd been talking about rainforests from a distance. When I went there and experienced them, I thought, okay, now I understand how people want to cut it down and grow crops or do something useful with the land. Now, this is heresy. You're all going, ah. But I went there and I understood, because I lived 4 months in a forest, and I went, yeah, okay, dark, horrible, smelly, everything goes moldy, cut it down, do something useful with the land that you can make money out of. Okay. So we've got to understand people and their motivations and where they are and what they're interested in, and not turn everyone into us. Please no, don't turn everyone into us, because we're not normal, okay? I'm looking at a whole bunch of people that are not normal. We are not normal representatives of society. We've got to get into what people are really interested about if we were interested in influencing the future. So going up to the top again, next to Babadium upside down, we have got, anyone know who this guy is? Or actually not the person, but the character he's playing.
Is it Captain Crab?
Hey, Crapman. This is Crapman. Now, Andy, I'm going to ban you from speaking from now on, because anyone who's heard me speak before will hear about Crapman. This is a campaign run at Healesville Sanctuary. 10 years ago it started in Australia. And this was brilliant because it understood people. So I'm going to do this in less than a minute, is describe this particular campaign. They worked out that 7 million trees in Australia were cut down to be turned into toilet paper every year. Okay, there's an issue. And they said, how do we address that? The old issue, going back to Biodiversity, would have been, okay, tell people about that. Tell people how important it is that we save trees for wildlife. Get people engaged in the wildlife. People come to the Healesville Sanctuary, they see the native Australian wildlife, get them excited about it, and then they'll go away and switch to recycled toilet paper. No, they won't. No, they won't. And we know they won't because Healesville basically did the study of people's motivations and what they thought and what they knew about recycled toilet paper. And everyone that they asked knew that it'd be better for wildlife, for the environment, if they used recycled toilet paper. So telling them that is an utter waste of time. Giving them the information, waste of time. Their buying decisions were softness, price, and strength of the toilet paper. And actually, a lot of people thought that it was made out of toilet paper that had previously been used and now recycled. Which, if that's what you believe, thinking, someone telling you it's great for wildlife if you use something toilet paper that someone else has already used. I mean, blimey, you're not going to switch to using recycled toilet paper if you think the little brown flecks. Well, okay, stop there. So it's softness, price, and strength. So their campaign was led by a costume character called Crapman, who would walk around Healesville Sanctuary and congratulate people when they came out of the toilets for using recycled toilet paper. He would run stupid games, getting families to build towers out of recycled toilet rolls. They did it because they wanted to beat the other family and build the biggest, tallest tower. But by doing that, they're handling the toilet roll. So they're feeling that it's softer than they thought. They're realizing that it's stronger than they thought. And you do other stuff about price. In the first year of running the campaign, they switched 36,000 people to using recycled toilet paper. So going back to my previous thing, which we've already just crossed out here, the zoos are not about animals. They're about people. They're understanding people. If we can be clear on what we're trying to address, and be clear about what people are doing, how we can change them, that's brilliant. So we need to actually sometimes take a step back and go, let's stop doing things just because we were doing them. Let's actually work out what we're really trying to achieve, understand the behaviors and understand people. So I'm going to go down to Donald Trump now. Okay, as I said, I didn't know which direction I was going to go on in here. This is about understanding people. It's very dangerous to dismiss lots of people that don't think like us. Okay, many people were gobsmacked when Donald Trump was elected in Australia. No, that would be really weird. Elected as president in America. And many people, even campaigning in America, were therefore dismissing anyone who was supporting and voting for Donald Trump as being degenerate, idiots, stupid. That's dangerous, really dangerous. What you should do is go, okay, why? Why are they voting for him? What is he doing? How is he campaigning? What are his messages like? How are they getting them across? So instead of dismissing people that don't think like you or believe like you or have the same ideas, actually find out. That's the people that you actually want to start engaging with. So I'm going to go right down to this guy at the bottom. Okay. There's a little logo at the bottom next to the Natural History, it's the Natural History Consortium, and just to the left of that is a little, so right down at the bottom of the page is a little thumbnail of someone. Anyone know who that is? Okay, that's Ben Summerskill. Ben Summerskill used to be Chief Executive of Stonewall. I saw him do a keynote at a conference for environmental communicators, which is the Communicate conference organised by the Natural History Consortium, which is why that's next to his picture. We brought him in because we wanted to know why the huge change has been brought about in the last few years about LGBTQ rights, and what had they done as an organisation? And he gave lots of interesting insights, but one of the things he said was, and I've quoted this often since, he said, if you're in a room of people and they're all agreeing with you, you're in the wrong room. If you're in a room and people are all agreeing with you, you're in the wrong room. Go and talk to people who don't agree with you. Find out what they think, what they believe, what makes them tick. Then you're on the road to doing something different. So I'm going to go up from there just because it's close to the muddy boots picture. Not everyone likes to actually connect with nature and get out and get muddy in boots. Some people have shiny shoes. That's the picture next to it. We've got to talk about engaging people with the shiny shoes as well. Where am I going to go next? I'm going to go from shiny shoes to the organic cotton and recycled cotton t-shirts picture. What's that about? I've mentioned about being clear about what we want to try and achieve. The recycled toilet paper was one example. What about this? And I'm looking at my clock now. I've only got 3 minutes, 24 seconds left. There's no way I'm going to do all the bits on this piece of paper, but that doesn't matter. If you go out and buy a t-shirt, would you choose something made out of organic cotton or recycled bottles or something like that? They're both available. What would you base your choice on? Now, if I was talking to my MSc students, I would do a whole half an hour on this, but we're not going to do that. I'm going to go, okay, think about it. Which would you choose and why? Probably, and most people admit, you choose something because it's a nice color, or you need a t-shirt, or it's the cheapest, or it's available, or it's stylish, whatever. But actually, if you get rid of all of that and you go, yeah, but which is the best environmental choice? Some people will go straight for the recycled bottles because that sounds brilliant. But when you wash it, all those microfibers go down into the sea and destroy, that's awful. So surely the organic cotton one must be better. But then think about the huge amounts of land that are taken up and water for growing organic cotton. I was listening to the radio this morning about the slave labor in China producing the cotton. Oh, blimey, which is the right choice? So that's another thing we've got to think about. If we're actually wanting people to do things differently and make a good future for wildlife and people, let's acknowledge that this is really complex and it's really difficult for even people who want to make the right decision to be able to do so. So blimey, it's going to be difficult. The graph below that actually is a nice little thing on what is therefore the least environmentally damaging thing to make clothing out of. And I don't know if you can see it, depends on how big you printed it out, but actually kangaroo leather, wild kangaroo leather is possibly the least environmentally damaging option. It's basically sustainable harvest of a wild animal. So no farming, no antibiotics, no big land taken up. Basically, you just go and hunt as many kangaroos as you like and everyone wears kangaroo skins, okay? I'm trying to make you think here and question all of the time. So let's just do that for the last couple of minutes. Let's nip over to the left-hand, bottom left-hand pictures. They're all industrial landscapes, but you will frame how you look at them in different ways. The bottom left one is a palm oil plantation. That will give you, just me saying a palm oil plantation will give all of you different reactions. Above that is a coconut palm plantation. That feels a bit nicer, but it's an industrial palm plantation. Bottom middle of those four pictures, that's almond grove. So, and that's in California, where actually almonds take up an enormous amount of water as well. So if you switch to almond milk, for example, actually, oh, blimey, this is so complicated. All of these industrial landscapes we think of, I'm lucky enough to live in quite a rural area, and everyone goes, oh, that's beautiful, natural landscape. No, it isn't. That's already cleared industrial landscape. The right-hand picture, directly below the bottle of wine, actually, is actually an industrial landscape, which is a World Heritage Site to be protected. It's a Prosecco vineyard. That's an industrial landscape. It's a monoculture. So let's sometimes take it. So, okay, let's go back up to the middle. Oh, 14 seconds. There's a couple of things there. Fake fur is plastic. Fake fur harms oceans. This is basically encouraging people to make clothes out of farmed fur. What do you think about that? Oh, my phone. Right, I don't even have to turn that off because it's a new phone. I don't know how to turn it off. Okay, I'm just going to put it outside my office. Hang on.
Throw it out the window.
We could throw it out the window. I'm going to overrun by 2 minutes then. But look how that's been framed in the middle. The same issue about plastics in the oceans have been picked up by Woolovers to talk about how therefore you're going to wear something nice and warm this winter, and it's on their advertising. Also, other organisations which you might not agree with have picked up the same issue and used it to support them as well. Basically, all of this is all about questioning. And in fact, the last one I'm going to do, and I'm going to take half a second on this as well, is, again, it's about questioning. Directly below that, there's the graph, which some of you will be familiar with, from the State of the Planet report, which comes out every 2 years. And it's about this reduction in biodiversity. And this is about the reduction in populations of animals. It's a brilliant report. It's really powerful. It's another thing that makes me very cross, because it's translated into this bite of, we've lost 70% of wildlife in the last 40 years or 50 years. We haven't. The reduction is an average. I'm getting into statistics now. It's an average reduction in populations. If you actually look at the technical report that lies behind it and the graph below that, you'll see actually the bottom bar there for mammals. Half of the populations of mammals that are being monitored are actually increasing, not decreasing. The red is decreasing, the green is stable, the blue is increasing. So sometimes the facts that we think we rely on and are really useful are not. So below that guy is Tim Harford. He does a podcast, radio program, Radio 4, I love Radio 4, where they basically take statistics that politicians say that are in the news, but including things like this, so we did one on this, and they pull them apart. And it's a brilliant program. So if you do nothing else after this, basically subscribe to Tim Harford's podcast, more or less, because that will also give you a different view of the world and constantly get you to question things. So I'm going to finish by basically saying, okay, that's me 20 minutes of catharsis of going, think about all these things and these connections. But what it is for me is taking a step back all of the time. We're so focused every day on our day jobs. Always question what we're doing, the assumptions we've made. Put yourself in other people's shoes. If you hear people that are saying things that you disagree with, find out why they're saying it. But I'll leave you with this thing, though, that actually it's so much better than it used to be. So down at the bottom, I've put 4 books that some of my favourite books. One of which is Factfulness, Hans Rosling and his offspring, because unfortunately Hans has died now. Which again goes through helping you understand how the world has changed. Zoos have changed massively in the time that I've been working for them. The world has changed, conservation has changed, I've changed, the way we communicate has changed. This is my first mobile phone. It's 20 years old. This is one I bought last week. The world has changed in the way we communicate, and things are so much better. And the fact that COP26 got so much coverage as well is amazing. We have made huge strides. We're on and up. So take heart in that as well, that actually the future, if we can get it right and understand what we're doing and who we're talking to, is just going to get better and better. We're part of the solution and we're getting there. So there we go. That's stuff I've learned over the last 30 years. And anything else that I haven't covered on that bit of paper, we can do in a coffee break or some other time, or you can email me or whatever. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a round of applause, everybody? I literally couldn't agree more with everything that you've just said. I think we are at a pivotal moment. Education needs to change. We need to change. We need to stop just telling people about animals. We've got to move on from telling people about animals. We really have. And, I think that's what we're here to help with, the Conservation Education Committee. That's what we need to get up to the council, the BIAZA council. That's what we need to get that information to some of the zoo directors that still perhaps would listen to your talk, Simon, and go, what are you going on about? One of my favorite things, I don't know whether you agree with this, is there are no environmental problems, there are just people problems. It's all about people.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. So hopefully that's made you folk kind of think a bit or agree a bit or disagree a bit. And if you disagree, that's brilliant. That's the whole point, really. But I think maybe what the best thing to do is if you've got a question for Simon, put it in the chat right now and we'll copy and paste that and maybe chuck it over to him so that he might be able to answer that, or maybe he could do some typing in the next few moments. I'm going to let's see if there's one lucky person who would like to ask a question now. Have we got any questions, or are you ready for coffee? Any questions? I'm not seeing any.
Nobody. Stunned silence.
Yeah, no, but I just couldn't agree more. That is the future. What you've just spoken about there is the future. Oh, Hamish has a question. Let's go for Hamish.
Yeah, I guess given that we normally talk to people like us who come to zoos and are interested, what channels do you think there are for us to try and engage people who aren't interested in these same topics?
Really good question. I'm going to give you 3 answers to that very quickly. One is that actually zoos are brilliant because lots of people come to zoos who aren't interested in animals because it's the day out. Of any conservation organisations, I think zoos have got the best opportunity of getting to the widest audience of those who may have just been dragged along. Second answer is, okay, my son is interested in technology and computer programming. My daughter is interested in music and jewellery making. So actually think about what other people's interests might be. If they're into motor racing, if they're into fine wines or something, do something in your zoo which is actually about that. Actually pick up a different area of things that people might be interested in. What floats their boat? What if you were really interested in history? What if you were really interested in tech? Okay, then maybe do something which brings them in that way. And my final thing is, it's actually, and my organization here is beginning to do this much, much more, and with our future thinking is about getting outside. So right down at the bottom, going back so next to Ben Summerskill and the Natural History Consortium logo as well, and to the right of that are 2 documents which are they're consortium documents from the area. One is addressing the climate emergency and one the ecological emergency. And these have basically been produced by all sorts of organisations across Bristol. Now, I'm lucky in Bristol, and lots of these connections and organisations and groups exist. And the Natural History Consortium recently set up an online meeting between the cultural organisations in Bristol and the environmental organisations. And you just hear the same thing. The art galleries and the cinemas are basically saying, we need to know, we need to reduce our footprint on the world. How do we do it? Everyone wants to join in. So it's about those networks as well, and getting outside of our bubble and going and talking to people in all sorts of other walks of life. People who run chip shops, the stuff that Chester Zoo has done, talking to restaurants across the city and getting them so that, sustainable palm oil pops up on menus when people go out for dinner. It's we've got such a fantastic opportunity in zoos, and people that come to us, but also the connections we've got that we can go to. Amazing opportunity. We've just got to use them.
Yeah, brilliant. Great question. Thank you very much for that answer as well. So, any questions, please pop them in the chat and we'll make sure that Simon gets them, and we'll work out a way for him to reply, whether it's right now or later.